Let's go to the town manager's report.
Last week, we announced the launch of the third annual Civic Leadership Academy. As this board knows, we launched this program 3 years ago as a way to bring residents into the fold, help them develop a better understanding of local government, and inspire new residents to get involved with local government. The first 2 years were a tremendous success, and we're looking forward to year 3. This year's program will run on Wednesday evenings from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. beginning on August 19th and ending on October 14th. Residents can apply online today at tyngsborough.gov, and applications will be accepted through July 31st at 12 o'clock p.m. Following an action of the Select Board at its last meeting, we're looking for residents and local business owners who are interested in joining the Middlesex and Westford Road Strategic Visioning Committee that the board established. If you're interested in helping study, plan, and guide development along Tyngsborough's primary commercial corridor, this opportunity is for you. You can learn more and submit your letter of interest today by visiting tyngsborough.gov. The next agenda item is a specific update on the fire station project, but I wanted to share a parallel route that we're doing our due diligence on. Throughout the course of the project, we've heard that some people are concerned that it's a fire station this year, and in no time we're looking at the need for a new police station. That represents, for many, an unsustainable tax increase. I remain confident that the cost of constructing from scratch a new public safety building was too high of a burden for many in our community to bear. It was that principle that caused the select board at the time and the fire station building committee, it was a result of that, to focus on what we saw as our most critical need, which was a fire station. However, in recent weeks, we've had preliminary conversations with the owner of 100 Potash Hill Road, which is a large office building that's currently for sale. You may know it as the building that Lowell General had its administrative offices in. So if you go up Westford Road, it's the brick office building right after where the temple is being constructed. The building has just over 36,000 square feet and a big enough footprint to accommodate both police and fire. While we're very early in the process and certainly far from a guaranteed thing, I wanted to let the board know and the town know that we're exploring every option that's available to us with the ultimate goal of achieving our needs within a financial framework that the community can afford. Certainly, acquiring and retrofitting an existing building would be far cheaper than new construction. Chief Russell, Chief Woods, DPW Superintendent Zwicker, and myself toured the property 2 weeks ago, and I'm working on getting an architect to help us better understand the work that would need to be done to convert it into a public safety building. Not just simple renovation, but make it actually work for us and what that might cost. If that pans out, and again, I just want to emphasize that we're very early on, but I want the community to know that we're not just focused on one particular path, we're looking at everything. Town meeting would be required to not only authorize the purchase of the property, but to also approve the funding necessary to acquire it and convert it into a public safety building. We're still continuing down the same route that we've talked about at every meeting as far as the Fire Station Building Committee is concerned, and in our next update we'll talk about that. But if this particular opportunity moves any further, the next step would be for the select board to discuss it in an executive session, since it would relate to potential negotiations of a purchase. Again, I just want to reiterate that we're very early on. We've toured the building once. Municipal acquisition of land is not as simple as private acquisition, but we are committed to exploring the best path forward that presents itself to us within a financial framework that makes sense. I also want to note you received a letter from a resident suggesting we look at a similar approach to 347 Middlesex Road. We have reached out to the owner of that property. We haven't heard back yet. That one is not actively listed for sale in the way that 100 Potash is. On a staffing front, this week we'll conduct second round interviews for our Director of Elder Services position, which is being vacated this month with the retirement of Barbara Roach. 2 weeks ago, we had initial round interviews with panelists, including the Chair of the Council on Aging, our Director of Veteran Services, and Barbara Roach herself. This second round includes Chair Gilfus, myself, Assistant Town Manager Sean Walsh, and our Director of Human Resources. If all goes well, I hope to be able to make an offer in the next week or so. There will be a brief period of time where we're in limbo, but we're hoping to minimize that as much as possible. On the grant front, I'm happy to share that late last week we closed out the $2 million MassWorks grant project that we received in 2023. That was for the Kendall Road Improvement Project, which saw the creation of Commerce Drive, which is that new roadway that connects Kendall Road to the park and ride, the DPW yard, and then the new warehouse project behind both of those parcels. The project also saw the widening of Kendall Road, the installation of sidewalks, and various infrastructure improvements around sewer and water. We're grateful to the Commonwealth for their support and to Marcus Partners for their work on the project, which has gone incredibly smoothly. They've been great partners, and we're looking forward to seeing that development completed. On that same note, we applied for a new MassWorks grant to fund the design that's necessary for National Grid to expand its energy capacity on Kendall Road. We've talked about this before, the need to support Marcus Partners warehouse development and the lack of existing capacity, but also to provide the energy necessary for the assisted living / continuing care project that town meeting approved a zoning change for, and that's working its way through the permitting process. We asked the state for $650,000, which is the cost of the initial design. That's what National Grid requires up front to start the design. But even once the design is complete, the developers will be responsible for roughly $6.5 million to actually construct the energy. Our hope is that we'd be able to get another infrastructure grant down the road when we're at that phase, but at the end of the day, it would be the developer that's responsible for it. On the budget front, I'm happy to share that Governor Healey signed the Fiscal Year 27 State Budget into law late last week. The final budget delivers positive news for Tyngsborough. For starters, our overall state aid will increase by $205,000 over what the governor's original budget was called for. You'll remember that we do our budget based off of the governor's budget. So that means that we'll receive $205,000 in state aid more than what we budgeted. Because we don't have an authorization from town meeting to spend that money, that will just become part of free cash, which could then be allocated by town meeting for any other purpose. On top of that, Senator Vonna Howard was able to secure $25,000 in the budget for municipal improvements. We're currently talking to department heads about the best way to use that money. And Representative Colleen Gary secured $25,000 for overtime to support our efforts on Lake Muscoppic and $60,000 to replace a fire alarm monitoring system in our emergency communications center at the police department. So we did very well this year in the state budget, so we appreciate the state for that. Just a few reminders, the Fire Station Building Committee's online feedback form is live through July 23rd. Hard copies can also be obtained here at Town Hall for those who prefer to go that route. The Tyngsborough Public Library will continue to host the Mass Hire Mobile Career Center van here at the library every Tuesday from 9:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Come visit and learn more about job opportunities, resume building, and much more. And then the Party by the Bridge is back. Join us on Saturday, August 29th, 2026. The event runs from the Town Center from 11 a.m. until fireworks at dark. The event is jam-packed with fun for everyone, and as always, we are still looking for volunteers, so if you're willing and able to help, visit partybythebridge.com to sign up today.
Last week, I met with residents from the Elm Street neighborhood, some of which are here this evening, surrounding the Sandbar Beach Club to discuss their concerns, which include safety, parking, occupancy, club operations, and advertising, as well as compliance issues stemming from the premises. This was a very insightful meeting to help us work towards finding a solution for both the licensee and the neighborhood. So, we'll be taking that information from that meeting and discuss ways in the very near future so that we can strengthen the agreement strengthen the agreement with Drake to help address some of those issues. Excuse me. And then next week, we'll begin the long-awaited document scanning project for documents housed in the Winslow School building. Recently, we awarded a contract to Queso Document Services after an RFP review for handling the files stored within the building. Documents will be removed, scanned, incorporated within our existing permitting and document management systems for ease of access for both staff and members of the public. With work beginning next week, we expect files will be fully removed within a couple of weeks, and the entire project should be completed by the end of the calendar year. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you both. Let's open it up to questions and comments. Select Person Marino.
Sure. So for 100 potash, do you have any idea when that analysis or the rough costs will be done? I'm just trying to figure out how that'll land with the timeline we're working on for the new construction proposal.
I don't have a firm date simply because we don't have, we do not currently have an appropriation to hire an architect, so
Sure.
we're working with resources that we have. But I'm confident that we'll have that analysis done, I would say, in the next month or so.
Okay.
The broker for the property rattled off all kinds of numbers of what it would cost to retrofit it. They're talking in private sector dollars, not municipal dollars, which is kind of the thing. But on top of just the cost to retrofit it, we also want to make sure that there's no surprises in the building. Our untrained eyes may not pick up on everything. So my goal is to have an architect in some form out there to see the property in the next week or 2 weeks. And, we're not going to be asking them to do a design at this phase. We're going to be asking them to comment on the feasibility and give us a number we can go to town meeting with. So I certainly expect that, by the time the Fire Station Building Committee is presenting its findings to you at your joint meeting on August 10th, we'll have a much clearer idea of what the cost differences are.
Great. And then in that kind of that same geographic area, 93 and 84 Kendall Road, outside of those two properties, is there any benefit to other adjacent parcels along Kendall?
To the energy increase?
If the project were to move forward?
No. So in fact, the project as designed will only deliver some of the capacity that both of them are
Okay.
looking for. It's not, there's a complicated formula National Grid uses that they explain to us. They basically don't like to overload their transformers above 70% of their total capacity. That leaves a small gap, a gap that both developers have acknowledged they can work with, but it doesn't leave any excess capacity for any other large projects. Those are the two that we're familiar with on that particular route. But no, it's just those two.
Okay. And then my last question for you is the 25,000 that we received in municipal improvements, are there any parameters to how that can be spent?
Knowing you're likely stumbling upon how we'll pay for an architect to look at 100 Potash.
Okay. All right. And then, Mr. Walsh, just one question for you.
Sure.
The documents that were in the Winslow School, what type of documents are we looking at?
Yeah, it's a combination. A lot of them are building records. I'd say the majority are building records. Most of them are older, belonging to various departments here within Town Hall. But I'd say the vast majority are building.
And there's some form of state requirement that mandates that we keep those records?
Yeah, there's a very, very long and thorough document retention guide that will dictate of those which can get scanned and discarded, which are going to be scanned for ease of use, but hard copies have to be retained. And then there may be some that we don't have to retain at all. Part of the process next week that we're going to go through on Tuesday is going to be go through more thoroughly with the vendor in that building, the documents, identify, is there anything we don't have to scan? That way we can destroy them, and then identify for them what they can rebox and take out of there.
Awesome. All right, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Select Person Marino. Select Person Galabocas?
I have no questions or comments.
Thank you so much. Select Person Eldridge?
Thank you. The Sandbar Beach Club, so we're breaking out, are we looking at the items that we can control, and then also looking at the items are relative to the Drake-It agreement? Because obviously there are some things that could be under our control, and then there are some things that we've got to go through Drake-It. Are we parallel
Absolutely.
paths?
Yes.
Because my concern is, I don't know how receptive Drake-It's, they got a lot of stuff going on. So I'm concerned about their ability to come to the table. And I know
I've already
Colin's
had
chomping at the bit.
Yeah, no. I had a virtual call with the town manager from Drake-It 2 weeks ago, and she has expressed that it's just the town manager, it's not the select board. She has expressed her belief that the select board would be amenable to structural changes to the agreement. Obviously, to Sean's point, they're parallel things. If there's something happening in Tyngsborough, we have to deal with it. But I think what we need to do in the agreement, and this is what her and I talked about, is codify how things are being documented, which is the biggest problem. We've heard from residents that they call the police, they don't document it. All of that is relevant because if Drake-It was to have, say, a disciplinary hearing on the liquor license and they can't substantiate, there's no police reports, that becomes problematic. So that needs to be documented. There also needs to be agreements on how Drake-It is responding, how they're sharing information with Tyngsborough. Back when this first started to come up, one of the biggest complaints we heard from neighbors at the time is that they would actually go to Drake-It select board meetings and be told that because they lived in Tyngsborough, they weren't allowed to speak. That's something that's got to be cleared up in the agreement. So certainly I've gotten the feeling in talking to Kate Hodges, who's my counterpart in Drake-It, that there is a willingness to work together. And now that Sean's done this fact-finding mission with the residents to better understand, I think that it's going to be making sure we're doing our part, but that the things that are happening in Drake-It, we're holding them to make sure that they're enforcing it, they're documenting it, and when appropriate, I'm not suggesting that it has to happen, but when appropriate, hearings on the licenses are being taken, the license holder is being held accountable, because that's really the only way that you can cross the threshold with the ABCC to take any sort of action. So it's a multifaceted approach.
Yeah, this sounds eerily similar to what we had done with water and sewer Drake-It, because there wasn't as much communication going on, and we said we have to work together on those types of things. And once we were able to codify that and make it clear as to roles and responsibilities and what was happening, that it got better. Didn't fix all the issues, because we always have to work through some of those, but it sounds eerily similar. So thank you for the update. Question on 100 Potash. That building originally, that was what, late 80s and has been updated in the late 90s? I'm just trying to understand like what state the building might be in relative to initial building and
Sure.
age and that sort of thing.
One of the reasons that we want to bring the architect on is because we obviously didn't do a full assessment of like the mechanical systems. The walkthrough that we had, the building has been maintained. It appears in great order. The property is in great condition. The exterior of the building appeared to be in great condition. The inside is still in really, the tenant that is currently leaving still has a lease there. So they're still maintaining like storage and stuff. It's not actively used as an office. But yeah, those are the things that are not just cosmetic that you can't just see is what we're hoping to have an architect do a better understanding of.
Okay.
And of course, we have the advantage of having all of the building permit data, so we can see when the roof was last replaced. We can see all of the work that went on over there.
Thank you. And then really glad to see that the Kendall Road stuff is coming to completion. Drove down it. Good to see the DPW, the structure there. Things are progressing along. That's been a long time in the making, so glad to see that we're making some progress there, and I will leave it at that for now.
Thank you, Select Person Eldridge. Select Person Coughlin.
Just a quick question. The $650,000 grant for Mass Works, so it is for the design capacity for National Grid. Now, they're doing a big study that's supposedly going to end in 2027. Does that impact anything, or will they weigh in? How will that work?
So that will to some extent help Tyngsborough. That's a larger study that looks at feeders coming to Tyngsborough, primarily driven by development issues in Westford. This specific study will only address the upgrades necessary on the transformer line that runs up Kendall Road. So the only potential benefit from that larger study is that they may down the road increase the overall capacity coming to that Middlesex Road substation, which could increase capacity if they do other upgrades. But the way that they've described it is that the transformers there are built and designed only to handle X capacity. And so even if they increase the capacity elsewhere, they still need to undertake this design and construction of new transformers to handle the larger load. So there may be a down the road benefit, but not directly related to the 650.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Select Person Coughlin. For the Civic Leadership Academy, do you keep metrics about essentially like how effective the program is? Like what the outcomes have been, if people have been more engaged, involved, have run for office or volunteering, stuff like that?
Yes, really the two that we've tracked are out of the graduates, how many have run for office or served on a board or committee. I think that we've had 4 run for office, 2 were elected, and the select board has appointed at least 5, although it might be 6 prior participants to some of the appointed boards and committees.
That's awesome. If you wouldn't mind putting together a report at some point for us, no urgency, but I think it would be great for us to celebrate that. When you say that the Mass Works grant has been closed out, at what point in the what does closed out mean?
It means that we have submitted a completion report to the state. We have submitted our final reimbursement request, and they have sent us the final reimbursement. So these large grants, their reimbursement, we spend X dollars, we immediately turn over and ask for reimbursement. They hold a certain amount until the project is closed out to make sure that the project was built to what they were told. We've crossed that hurdle. They've released the final payment, so we're out of it now. The work is done. They've given us all the money. The money's been spent, and now it's turned over to the private developer.
Thank you for that clarity. And Sean, in terms of the conversation about the sandbar, will we be able to see notes from that conversation or at least an understanding of what you're proposing when you go to Drake-It before you do that? Or will you just give us a readout after the conversations with Drake-It?
Yeah, for starters, I can certainly pass along a summary that I've discussed with the residents from that neighborhood from our meeting last week. I can send that along as soon as this evening or tomorrow morning. From there, further discussions are ongoing, and we can keep you updated, certainly.
Awesome.
And you will have to see draft conditions because the agreement is ultimately with the select board in both towns. So before we propose changes to them, the select
We
board
have to
certainly will
actually-
have a chance to see them. Absolutely.
Perfect.